Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing great today. So let's talk about something that's been stirring up a bit of noise in the NHL 26 community lately, the newest update, version 1.1.4. Now, I know when EA drops a patch like this, sometimes it feels like a mystery box. They don't always throw out a massive list of notes, and we're all left trying to piece together what exactly changed, what got fixed, and whether the issues that have been driving everyone nuts finally got sorted out. So that's what we're going to break down here, what this update actually does, why it matters, what players are saying, and what it might mean for where the game's headed next. Now, first off, let's get something straight. This update isn't one of those huge game-altering ones that completely change how NHL 26 plays. It's not a full-on gameplay overhaul, it's not new features or modes being dropped in. This one's more of a stability and reliability patch. Basically, EA rolled it out to fix a crash that's been haunting players in one of the game's most popular modes, EASHL 6v6. If you've been grinding in clubs lately, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Players would load into the dressing room, everything seemed fine, then the moment the game tried to start, boom, crash to the main menu, or sometimes even a full game freeze. It was random, unpredictable, and incredibly frustrating, especially when you've been coordinating with teammates, finally get everyone ready, and then the lobby just implodes on you for no reason. EA called it a rare crash, but if you scroll through the forums or Reddit threads from the last few weeks, it sure didn't feel rare to the people experiencing it. Whole teams were losing nights of playtime because they couldn't get past that lobby. There were players talking about it happening in back-to-back sessions, sometimes 5 or 6 times in a row. It was one of those bugs that might seem small in description, but it hits at the heart of the experience. Because for people who play clubs, that's the core of the game. That's where the fun lives, and nothing kills that faster than being unable to start matches reliably. So the new patch came out in early October, and it was pushed mainly to current-gen consoles, PS5 and Xbox Series XS. The file size was small, which right away told players it was more of a focused fix than a sweeping update. When people first started noticing it, the version number showed as 1.1.4, or on some systems it appeared as 1.014, depending on how your console labels updates. EA didn't post a giant wall of patch notes on their site this time, but through their social media announcement and a few official channels, they confirmed that this update was mainly targeting that dressing room crash issue in 6v6 EASHL. What's interesting, though, is that EA's maintenance announcement that went with the patch made it sound like this wasn't just a small local fix. They actually had to take the servers down briefly to deploy it, which means there was probably a back-end component to it too. If you've ever paid attention to how EA handles these stability fixes, that usually means the bug was happening partly because of how the client and server were communicating, possibly a lobby state desync or an error when transitioning between the dressing room and the match start. And honestly, that lines up perfectly with what players were describing. That transition moment, when all players are locked in and the screen fades to load the rink, is where a lot of data passes between the console and EA's servers. If even one packet of that fails or mismatches, it can crash the whole thing. So it's very likely this patch was about cleaning that up. After the patch dropped, players started testing it right away. Some said the problem disappeared completely. They were finally able to get through multiple sessions without any crashes. Others said they still had a few hiccups, though maybe not as often. What that suggests is that the fix worked in a majority of cases, but there might still be some edge conditions left, maybe related to specific team loadouts, custom uniforms, or connection types. That's usually how it goes with multiplayer bugs like this. They get mostly fixed, but sometimes the devs have to collect new crash data after a hotfix to fully close it out in the next patch. And to EA's credit, this patch came fairly quickly after reports started picking up. That's a good sign that they're paying attention and prioritizing stability early in the game's lifecycle. NHL 26 only recently launched, and one of the biggest complaints the community has had with past games is how long it sometimes takes to see real responses to bugs. So even though this one might not look like much on paper, the fact that it hit servers so fast shows they're keeping a tighter feedback loop this year. Now, if you're someone who's still experiencing crashes after the update, there are a few things worth checking. Make sure your game actually updated properly. Sometimes consoles miss automatic updates if you had rest mode downloads turned off. Double check your version number in the game's information tab. If it still shows an older build, you can manually trigger an update check. Once you're confirmed on the new patch, fully close the game, restart your console, and reconnect to the servers fresh. It sounds simple, but with EA titles, the cache can sometimes hold on to pre-patch data until you force a restart. And if it still happens, EA's official forums and their help site are taking reports with timestamps and platform info. That's the best way to get your specific crash logs reviewed. Something else worth mentioning here is the tone of community reaction. Most players welcomed the patch, obviously, but there's a layer of cautious optimism going on. People are happy the crash is being addressed, but they're also asking for more communication about gameplay changes. Right now, the game still has a few balance issues people are vocal about: poke checks, defensive reactions, some goalie inconsistencies, and LT skating mechanics. EA has said they're gathering data and feedback for those areas and plan to address them in upcoming updates. But those kinds of changes take longer. They involve tuning sliders, physics adjustments, and testing to make sure one fix doesn't create three new problems. So even though this update didn't touch gameplay directly, it's kind of the calm before the storm in that sense. We can probably expect a larger patch later in October or early November that focuses on those things. One of the reasons updates like this are worth talking about, even when they're small, is because they set the tone for how responsive EA plans to be. Right? Have a long memory. They remember years where bugs lingered for months, but they also remember the rare years when EA really stayed on top of patches and communication was clear. This year, they seem to be leaning more toward the proactive side. Smaller, more frequent patches, quicker turnaround times, and public acknowledgement of specific problems. Even the simple act of tweeting about scheduled downtime before pushing a patch is a big step up from how things used to go down. There's also been some speculation that these early patches are partly preparing for bigger content drops later on, maybe new customization options for clubs or tuning adjustments for World of Chell modes. EA tends to roll out these backend updates to smooth things out before those bigger feature patches. If that's the case, then this small hotfix might actually be laying the groundwork for what's next. Another interesting part of the conversation around this patch has been how consistent the reports were from players before the fix. When you see dozens of people describing the exact same issue, that's a strong sign the bug was widespread. Players were even posting short clips showing the crash happening right as they entered the loading screen. In some cases, it would even crash for every single player in the lobby simultaneously, not just one or two. That's another clue it wasn't just a client bug, it had to be something at the network or server handshake level. So if you think about it, this patch might have fixed not only your local experience, but something on EA's end too. As for performance overall, players have noticed the game feels a touch smoother post-patch. Again, that's anecdotal, but it makes sense. Anytime a patch touches stability or memory handling, you'll often see fewer micro-stutters or desync moments in menus or between transitions. It's subtle, but it's there. So what does all this mean for the state of NHL 26 right now? Well, it means the devs are in bug fix mode early, which is exactly what the game needs after launch. The core gameplay is still being evaluated, and we'll probably see a bigger balance update next. But for the moment, stability is improving, online play is more reliable, and the ESHL community can finally get back to doing what they do best, playing actual games instead of fighting with crashes. If you're one of those players who took a break because of the crashes, now's a good time to hop back in and see how it feels. Load into a few 6v6 lobbies, test out the matchmaking, and see if the issues you had before are still there. And if they are, don't just get frustrated. Report them. Those reports genuinely help EA pinpoint the outliers that a patch might have missed. And for everyone else wondering what's next, keep an eye on EA's social channels over the next few weeks. Once they gather enough data from this hotfix, they'll shift back toward gameplay feedback and balancing. We'll probably see changes to defensive stick mechanics, pass interceptions, and maybe some tweaks to skating responsiveness. They've already hinted at this in Q&A sessions.